Hi, everyone. Welcome to our table read of the infamous Lord of the Rings script written by John Boorman in the 1970s that was written but never filmed. We will be reading every line of dialogue, but I've condensed the narration so we're not here all day. Don't worry, I've left all the weird stuff in. So to start, we're going to go around and everyone is going to tell us who they are and the bigger parts they're playing. Everyone has kind of doubled up on some parts. So I'm Colin. I'll be doing the narration.
I'm Brian. I will be Gandalf.
I'm Laura, and I'll be Frodo.
I'm MK. I'll be Mary.
I'm Langley, and I will be Pippin and Saruman.
I'm Dean. I'll be Sam.
I'm Asa, and I'll be Aragorn.
I'm Jared. I'll be Boromir and Wormtongue.
I'm Tom, and I'll be Gimli.
I'm Matt, and I'll be Legolas.
I'm Susan, and I'll be Gollum.
I'm Liz, and I'll be Bilbo and Arwen.
I'm Earl, and I will be Elrond and Assorted Soldiers.
I'm Amanda. I am Galadriel and many hobbits and orcs, apparently.
I'm Christine. I'm Arwen and some random voices.
And I'm Ian. I will be Denethor and the Nazgul/Witch King.
Okay, and yeah, everyone has taken on some smaller parts and everyone knows who they are. So let's do this. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, screenplay by John Boorman and Rospo Pallenberg. Interior, booklined study. A small room cluttered with books. Thin sunshine plays on the desk where an elderly man is bent over his writing. He turns slowly as though disturbed and peers across his spectacles at the intruding camera. J.R.R. Tolkien. Titles begin, The Lord of the Rings. Moving away from the incandescent furnace of boiling lava in the volcanic crater of Mount Doom, sulfurous flames rise into a luminous night sky. Back further to show a barren, broken terrain with angry fortifications carved out of living rock. It is the land of Mordor, domain of Sauron. The voices belong to children and old men. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie, 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. Minas Tirith is strong and arrogant, but human, and is bruised from long years of war. Moving further and further away from the 2 lands of Mordor and Gondor, and across the snowy peaks of the misty mountains until a blizzard extinguishes the view. The sun rises to its meridian over the whole land of Middle-earth, and then falls away to the west and dips behind the soft verdant hills of the Shire. Titles end. It is a late afternoon. Lights are twinkling in the cottages of the hobbits. One house is a little bigger than most and much more boldly lit.
My dear, dear friends, hobbits of the Shire.
The area is teeming with hobbits, a small, plump, jolly folk done up in their Sunday best. They sit at long tables piled high with food. It is a rustic, Bruegel-like atmosphere with a touch of Arcadia. At the head of the top table, an old hobbit, Bilbo, is standing, making a speech.
Hobbits of the Shire, my dear people, the Packinses and the Boffins, the Tooks and the Brady Books, the Grubs and the Chubbs, the Goodbodies and the Padfoots.
Proud feet.
Woo! Today is my 111th birthday. Today I'm 11-1.
11-1.
Every year I make my little speech, but this time I have something to say, something important to say.
But he doesn't finish the sentence. There's a sudden glow of light over the yard, and then a crackling sound followed by a bang. All heads swing up in the same direction. Against the violent evening sky, a red firework explodes in a design depicting the Gothic letter G.
It's Gandalf! Gandalf is here!
Gandalf is here?
Next to Bilbo is the cloud of blue smoke from the firecracker. It clears to reveal a towering figure in a long gray cloak.
Don't let me interrupt you, Bilbo Baggins. You were about to say something important. Say it now and get it over with.
Sorry to say, I have to leave you. I am going away for a bit. In fact, for good.
No, shame.
I leave everything to my dear nephew Frodo.
Frodo, a young hobbit, is walking across the yard carrying a birthday cake with 111 candles on it. He looks embarrassed at the mention of his name and sets the cake down clumsily on the table.
You see, being 11 to 1, the time has come.
11 your time has come.
Bilbo Baggins is 11
11. The fun has only just begun.
I am touched, dear friends. Perhaps a few days longer? Why be hasty? I will stay a little longer. A few months, even a year or two.
The display of fireworks erupts into life, whirling rings of fire and flashing eyes. The hobbits look up in wonder, but Bilbo is frightened. Then Gandalf tosses a firecracker over his shoulder. He speaks, but no words can be heard over the deafening explosion. But Bilbo reads his lips clearly as Gandalf mouths the words, "The ring." Bilbo looks uneasy. As the fireworks erupt and crackle, Gandalf comes over to him. He takes the hand of a hobbit lady and does a conjuring trick, removing her ring and producing it from his ear. She shrieks with pleasure.
The ring, the ring.
Bilbo is even more discomforted. He signals to the little band and they start to play strange, wild dance music. One instrument is a mixture of bagpipes and a saxophone, another something between a fiddle and a ukulele. The hobbits whirl and bob and kick and clap in the rich patterns of their dance. They dance in pairs but constantly change partners. Bilbo is flushed and happy, but suddenly he sweeps around and he finds himself caught in Gandalf's arms, who leads him in a giddy, twisting dance. He looks deep into Bilbo's eyes and everything else becomes excluded. Confused whirl of color, a blur of trees, lanterns, stars.
I so much want to stay, but I know it's time to go. Curse all magic rings!
Get up then, before it gnaws you all away.
It gave me long life, but it hasn't been longer, really, just drawn out. I feel thin, like butter that's been spread over too much bread.
And if you stay, you'll start to fade and fade and fade away. Eke out your years with the elves, dear Bilbo. Time is steady there. It will not stretch you as it does here.
I'll go.
The world grows suddenly dark and Bilbo looks alarmed. The music fades, then stops, as though just deciding to leave was enough to whisk him away from the Shire. Vegetables and flower garden beyond Bilbo's yard. They have halted abruptly, and Bilbo finds that Gandalf has merely spun him into his own back garden, and they are standing amid the cauliflower.
And the ring.
Very well. I'll give it to Frodo.
Where is it?
I'm not sure. I put it down somewhere.
In your pocket.
Well, so it is.
Gandalf takes off his hat and holds it out, not wanting to handle it himself.
Put it in there. I'll give it to Frodo.
Now that it comes to it, I don't like parting with it at all.
Gandalf bristles and he looks menacingly at Bilbo. He crumples under the wizard's glare and drops the ring in the hat. Then he smiles at Gandalf.
Well, it's done. What a relief.
He is suddenly lightheaded, a great burden lifted from him. He looks around the garden with a fond last look, then through the archway at the Reveliers. He sees Frodo dancing shyly with a buxom hobbit maiden.
Poor Frodo. Watch over him, Gandalf. What fun to be off again on the open road.
Goodbye for the present, dear Bilbo. Take care of yourself.
Goodbye, Gandalf.
Bilbo trips away down the winding path and starts to sing.
The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began, and on and on and on and on and on.
His voice fades off and the path meanders away to join the road which winds through the valley. Or is it a river? Exterior courtyard, night. The party is over. Frodo is bidding goodbye to his young friends, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. Frodo falls back into his chair and slumps on the table asleep. Later, he jerks awake and sits upright. Behind him in the trees, it is just possible to discern the outline of a horse and rider, and hidden by the leaves, its blind, skull-like face, still and watchful. Interior Bilbo's cottage, night. Frodo walks in, red-eyed, and Gandalf awakens, looking up.
Where's Bilbo?
Think he preferred to slip off quietly, much the best way. He left this for you.
Gandalf points to the ring lying on the ledge of the hearth. Frodo sits opposite Gandalf, and between them is the ring. The glowing fire casts a warm, mysterious light.
He's really gone then. The ring, has he left me that? I wonder why.
What do you know about the ring?
I know it was precious to Bilbo. He found it on his adventures with the dwarves. Is it magic? Does it make you disappear when you put it on, doesn't it?
Amongst other things. It's yours, take it.
Gandalf pretends to doze off again, but he opens an anxious eye surreptitiously as Frodo's hand stretches out to the ring. Frodo catches him watching and is suddenly reluctant and suspicious, but he picks it up and examines it curiously.
Put it on. Try it.
Frodo becomes excited, but also afraid. He tries to put it on compulsively, repeatedly, but he cannot. Gandalf becomes alarmed as Frodo becomes more and more worked up. He tries to stop Frodo, but Frodo pushes away his hand.
One to rule them in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Who taught you this?
It just came out. Here, I don't want it. You have it.
No, don't tempt me. Power should not be meshed with power.
Gandalf tries to rise as if to make a grand speech, but he sinks back into his seat.
I am a powerful wizard, and over me the power of the ring would gain a power still greater and more deadly.
For a moment, it seems that Gandalf, carried away by his intensity, is going to poke his index finger through the ring, or that Frodo will slip it on Gandalf's finger, but at the last moment he clenches his hand into a fist.
If it would do that to you, what would it do to me? What did it do to Bilbo?
It is only safe with someone simple, like a hobbit, like Bilbo.
Like me.
Goodness and innocence and pity are the only proof against its power.
Sam and Pippin burst in, followed by Merry.
A dark shape, a black horse, a face without eyes.
My dream. I just awoke from that dream.
Black Riders. Nothing to worry about. Some evil things are abroad. A shadow is passing over the Shire. It may be just as well for you to go away for a while until it passes. Take Sam and Merry and Pippin. You've come into your inheritance today. Celebrate. Take a holiday. Visit Rivendell.
A new day is dawning. The hobbits scuttle out of the door.
Goodbye, Gandalf.
You forgot the ring.
Frodo runs back and grabs it, forgetting his earlier doubts. He puts the chain around his neck.
And remember, don't put it on unless you have to.
Gandalf watches him go with an expression of infinite sadness. Valley of the Shire, early morning. 4 hobbits are tolling up the road, light packs on their backs. As they pass, a black rider appears on a hilltop in the far distance, just picked out against the sky. He looks down at the Shire below, and the hobbits do not see him. Bilbo's song, "The Road Goes Ever On and On," has begun. Countryside in spring. Their paths cross the brow of a hill, and they come upon an orchard full of apple blossoms. A path leads them out of the swirling petals into a field covered with mushrooms. The hobbits are delighted. They set to, picking and eating them as fast as they can. They begin to laugh and giggle, becoming rather unsteady on their feet. They lurch on their way with contented smiles on their face. The world looks a little misty, different. Suddenly they are in a field of buttercups. Naked children run and play among the golden flowers. I'm not sure what I'm reading now. The hobbits blink and grin, and Mary belches. Hayfield, day. The four hobbits walk through the long grass, just their heads showing like marbles rolling on a carpet. Suddenly, the tall grass stops, and the hobbits are confronted with a line of big people, cutting the grass with scythes. Startled, the hobbits scuttle back. One of the men catches a glimpse of a small hobbit being jumped back onto the grass. He blinks and wipes his brow, then turns to the man next to him.
Must be the heat, or did I see a halfling? Is anyone playing second man?
Someone is second man, I'm sure. Someone take it, I don't know.
Halfling, where? There's a reward if you catch one of them.
Sam, Merry, and Pippin scurry away, breaking out of the long grass further down and hiding behind a haystack. Frodo lags behind, a mischievous smirk on his face. He jumps over one of the scythe blades and struts up and down among the men, singing.
Oh, I'm a hobbit of the Shire. Am I a halfling you desire?
Frodo has the ring in his hand. The men are startled, then nasty looks cross their faces. They close in on him, ready to jump.
Oh, reapers of the hay, oh, reapers of dismay.
And then he leaps into the air doing a somersault. He puts on the ring and vanishes in midair. The reapers are truly dismayed. A cow pie suddenly splatters, struck by an invisible foot. Frodo materializes behind the haystack, holding the ring in his hand. He has a guilty, sheepish look on his face.
It just got itself to slip itself on.
While you, Master Frodo, stuck your foot in it.
The hobbits hurry away. High, open countryside and lane. In the distance, the hobbits see a flurry of dust coming towards them. They hurry off the lane and push through the hedge like rabbits. A rider thunders towards them. The black shape snuffles, searching like a bloodhound. Frodo has a very tense and flushed look on his face. He raises his hand to where the ring hangs at his chest. He touches it, fondles it. A bee sucking at a dog rose next to it. Frodo's hand appears, the ring poised over his finger. An effort of will shows in his face, and he draws the ring away. By a stream, evening. A mossy bank by a stream. The hobbits had made a fire, cooked and eaten. Sam is tidying up his pans. Pippin is laying down by the water, idly trying to tickle trout. Frodo and Merry are stretched out in post-prandial contentment. A few belches.
That's better. I feel more like a hobbit now.
And what did you feel like before?
Well, less like a hobbit.
They all laugh at poor Merry, but they know what he means.
I don't know if this is a holiday or hard work.
We've come so far so fast. I think our hobbit sense got left behind. We squeezed a Shire month into a day.
My pack's too heavy.
You feel the weight less, Mary, when you walked off some on your own.
Where is Rivendell then? Tell me now, one of you.
Some say it's here, some say it's there.
Does it move around then? Why doesn't it stay in one place? Elves are very elfish.
Never mind, Rivendell. Where are we? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, I go no further tonight, for one.
When the sun's in the west, rest is best.
When the sun's in the east, start the feast.
Merry mimes eating an enormous breakfast.
Those Black Riders, it's funny. When they've gone, I feel like they were never here. And when they're here, it feels like they'll never leave. And when they do go, you can't remember what they look like.
Master, if you think about them too much, they'll never leave you. Think about, let's see, Gandalf's fireworks.
Oh, you can see them if you close your eyes.
They all follow Pippin's example and squeeze their eyes closed, and now they all sit, grinning and sighing. In a gentle reverie of remembered pleasure, the hobbits are far away in their beloved Shire again, which it hasn't told us they've left yet, but okay. This is rudely interrupted by the chilling sound of geese screaming. The geese shriek and a donkey in a nearby field begins to bray. Quickly, the hobbits gather up their belongings.
It's a black rider. I can feel it.
The braying donkey appears and crashes through their camp.
Come on!
Where?
Anywhere!
And off he runs with the others at his heels, and soon they are in full flight past the little farmyard. In the yard, a dog howls, and across their stumbling path appears a black cat, hissing. Its shackles high. They run blindly on, caught by the terror at their heels, crying out themselves. In a field, over a moonlight plowed field, panic-stricken, the four hobbits fall and stumble. Ahead is a dark, menacing forest. They plunge into its thickets, not daring to look back as the hooves beat closer. They risk a glance back and see the dark form of the Black Rider, enmeshed in the dense undergrowth, and the flash of a great scimitar cutting a way through. But the branches seem to fight back, thrashing at the horse. The hobbits run on. They look back. No sign of their pursuer.
Do you see?
The tree.
On our side?
Bilbo always said there are good and bad trees, just as there are good and bad hobbits.
Pippin falls to the ground with a curse and jumps angrily to his feet again.
That root tripped me up.
Merry manages a snorting laugh.
Pippin, don't be ridiculous.
Merry goes over to where Pippin stands and immediately crashes to the ground himself, falling over the same root. He leaps up again, clenching his fist at the tree which owns the root.
Don't you try that stuff with me. I'll cut you down.
The forest creaks and groans angrily in response. Sam laughs at Merry, but as he steps back, a swooping branch catches him in the back and sends him sprawling. Sam rises and bursts out in anger.
You black-hearted tree! May woodworm devour you!
Sam pulls out his axe and rushes at the tree, his uplifted arm brandishing it. Angry tremors run through the forest. A low branch knocks the axe out of Sam's hand. Sam is thrown off balance, spins around, and goes crashing into the tree.
Big tree, forgive me. Please excuse me. I didn't mean it. All the plants in my garden love me.
It's the Black Rider's fault.
Please, big tree, don't fret. Go to sleep.
I wish I knew more about the language of trees like Bilbo.
Drink water. Go to sleep, big tree.
Eat earth. Dig deep.
Drink water. Go to sleep.
Look, Sam, the tree is quieting down. Eat earth.
Dig deep.
Drink water. Go to sleep.
Merry and Pippin join in. The anger of the tree subsides. The leaves begin to flutter softly. Merry and Pippin look up, and the hypnotic flutter of the leaves makes them drowsy.
Look, the trees like us.
We should get off the ground with these Black Riders prowling around.
Big tree, give us shelter for the night.
The tree seems to respond with a quiver, and Sam and Frodo notice Merry and Pippin staggering like drunks fighting off sleep. Sam and Frodo feel the hypnotic effect of the fluttering leaves. Staggering, they manage to grasp Merry and Pippin and drag them to the tree. They help them up. The four hobbits climb into the tree. Sleep overtakes them. They sink into the thick, soft foliage which seems to cradle them.
Eat dirt, dig deep, drink water. Go to sleep.
The big tree, morning. Early morning sunlight dappling through the leaves. Sam shakes Frodo awake.
Look, Master Frodo. We're right on the edge of the forest.
And I was sure we were deep in its heart.
Well, trees can't walk, can they?
I wish they could cook. I'm starving.
Well, we don't know where we are or where we're going, so we might as well start walking the way we're pointed.
Open country. The hobbits walk in silence. The mist lies low over the ground and visibility is getting worse.
Take cover! It's a Black Rider!
They all fall to the ground, finding the shelter of some lichen-covered rocks. Sam points. They watch anxiously and after a moment catch a glimpse of a horseman, drifting ghost-like through the fog. He disappears and they wait, straining to pierce the fog with their eyes. Again, the rider appears fleetingly, this time much closer.
Quick and quiet.
They can hear the hooves quite distinctly behind them. They begin to imagine riders everywhere. They quicken their pace, fear verging once again on panic.
Halflings? Oh boy, hobbits!
Halflings? He can hear us moving. We must hide.
They push on, running hard, keeping low.
Hobbits!
The hobbits scull away, zigzagging among the boulders. Suddenly, they catch a glimpse through the drifting fog of 3 black riders emerging from behind a knoll and fanning out, making the similar sniffling sounds as if they are following a scent. The hobbits freeze on the spot. They hear a horse galloping towards them. They bolt away. The rider leaps to the ground. He's a towering figure with a long, leathery face and keen blue eyes. Sam, showing great bravery, draws his long kitchen knife and, trembling, struts up to the man.
Black Rider, I am Sam Gamgee, Hobbit of the Shire. Turn and fight fair if you know how.
Which of you is Frodo?
I am.
I am.
Yeah, I am.
The man turns to Frodo, the only hobbit who has not spoken.
Do you bear it?
Bear it? Bear what?
I see you do. It draws them.
Who are you? Why have you pursued us if you're not a Black Rider?
I am a ranger.
He casts a commanding glance at the hobbits and motions that they follow him.
Why are we going with him?
What else can we do?
I don't like the look of him.
The Black Riders are pursuing them and seem about to engulf them. The hobbits are unable to maintain the ranger's pace. He sees this, glancing back, and realizes that further flight is hopeless. He stops, holding up one hand.
Stand and fight!
For a moment, the hobbits believe that he means with him. The ranger crosses his arms and draws 2 swords. They are the 2 broken halves of one sword. One hand brandishes the original handle while the other grasps a makeshift handle of leather bound around the blade.
Sorry, I got caught up in sword business. Shoulder to shoulder, make a ring!
The ranger and the tiny hobbits form a little circle, their cutlery pointing out into the fog. Immediately, 2 riders burst upon them. One has a scimitar which sighs the air. The other bears a long lance. The ranger drops to his knee to avoid the blade and swings his swords in an arc over his head. The 2 black horses lurch away. The hobbits throw themselves to the ground. The ranger's horse is above them, giving some protection. From another direction, a black rider charges, and the ranger's horse rears at the oncomer, who swerves away. The ranger drags the hobbits to their feet.
Get up! Halflings, protect your master!
He pulls Frodo to his feet, but when he releases him, Frodo sinks to his knees again. Frodo is half swooning. His hand goes to the ring, his eyes glaze. The black riders charge once again. The ranger thrusts out his 2 swords towards the sound of the hooves.
The ring, precious.
The leading horse catches the ranger with its flank and hurls him to the ground. He crashes into the hobbits. A scimitar slices across their heads, and a lance stabs the ground an inch from Frodo's leg. Frodo crawls away into the fog. He has the ring out now.
Master Frodo!
Frodo can bear it no longer. He slips on the ring. Frodo has disappeared.
They've taken him!
As Frodo becomes invisible, his perception changes. The fog disappears. His vision becomes extremely vivid. He sees the Black Riders as they slow down and turn ready to attack again. The ranger and the hobbits point their weapons out pathetically into the fog, which no longer exists for Frodo. The world of sound has changed too. He cannot hear the hoofbeats, nor what the ranger and Sam are calling out. Instead, he is assailed by a dense, crashing clamor of voices. All 9 riders charge at him. They ride on towards Frodo, ignoring the ranger and the hobbits. They are now 3 times normal size. 9 hands and rings come down towards him, and a voice chants above all the others.
9 rings for the mortal men doomed to die.
A lance is raised, descending slowly towards Frodo. Frodo sees the blind luminescent skull-like faces. Another voice booms, struggling to be heard, trying to warn Frodo.
Gandalf! Gandalf!
The riders stand above Frodo, frozen in time as Frodo struggles in the dimension of sound, trying to hear what Gandalf is saying. The sharp, evil lance point in the moment of his death is poised above him.
Over me, the ring would gain a power still greater, more deadly.
Frodo tears the ring off his finger. The moment of suspended time is released. The voices cease. The lance plunges down at him. Frodo rolls away from it, but not far enough, and its point pierces his shoulder. The fog returns.
There! Frodo!
The others see him too and catch a glimpse of lances and scimitars blindly stabbing and probing the earth throughout Frodo's crumpled body, desperately searching for Frodo, which is now quite visible. The ranger swings his sword and runs to Frodo's aid, but the riders have gone, disappearing into the fog. The ranger lifts Frodo into his arms, blood seeps from his wound, and Frodo is barely conscious. The ranger sits Frodo on his horse and then bundles the other hobbits up behind him.
Hold on for your life and his. The river.
The horse snorts. The ranger gives it a mighty slap on the rear and it gallops off.
Be faster than a sinking hope.
Valley and river day. The ranger's horse breaks out of the fog and into a valley at the bottom of which runs a river. On the slopes around them, they now see the Black Riders trailing whiffs of dust converging on the hobbits from all directions. Sam sees the river ahead and the 9 Black Riders converging from all sides, some from the left, some from the right, some from behind. Merry turns and sees the Black Rider catching up. He waves the frying pan to ward off the rider. The light flashes off the pan and for a moment blinds the rider's horse.
Rivendell!
Converging from all directions, the Black Riders come galloping up to the river, almost colliding into each other.
Therering. Give me a T. Give me a T. Give me a Ring.
Suddenly, a wave of water floods the river, as if materializing out of the spray. Mounted elven warriors on ponies, the color of foam, their manes and tails flying like the surf about them, gallop down the center of the river. They charge into the Black Riders, jousting them into the water, all except one who had not yet entered the river. The bodies of the Black Riders are dissolving in the water, and from the dissolving carcasses issues a black slime. What? Surviving Black Rider turns his horse and rears it up against the ranger, who crashes into the underside of the horse, toppling it into the river. The elves cheer. The Black Rider dissolves, and snake-like the liquid remains of the Black Riders coil and wind into each other. He really likes describing that.
Wow.
A slimy rivulet of dark blood oozes out of the wound in Frodo's shoulder. We are in Rivendell. Frodo lies on an enormous circular table. His inanimate body, stripped of clothes, is covered with leaves. Around the wound they are green, but as they move further away from the wound, they become autumnal green and umber in color. The ring on his chest is just visible through the leaves. Above Frodo's head, on a throne, is seated a tall figure. His face is ageless, with sad gray eyes. Upon his head is a circlet of silver. He is Elrond, king of the elves, lord of Rivendell. Seated around the table are the sages, kings, and warriors of Middle-earth. Bilbo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin are seated on one side of Elrond, and on the other, the ranger. Gandalf leans forward to examine the wound.
Wraith essence. Lord Elrond, Frodo fades still.
Here lies Frodo, the ring-bearer, pierced by a blade of the 9 Black Riders, the ring-wraiths, servants of our common enemy Sauron, Lord of Mordor. The raids have been vanquished, but from their foul essence, alas, a new form shall rise again. The hobbit lies now in the twilight of the wraith world. He begins to fade, his arm first. If we cannot halt the rotting of his blood, he will pass into the service of Sauron. Strong indeed has Sauron become, that this wound defies the healing power of the elves. Let his life be uplifted and float upon a sea of song.
Frodo's arm is becoming transparent. The bone is quite clear beneath the translucent skin. Elrond rises and motions towards a young girl, about 13 years of age, who is passing her hands through the flames of the great fire. In one hand, she holds a long, thin blade. Summoned by Elrond, blade in hand, she moves to Frodo.
Gimli, the dwarf, lord of the axe, come forward. Should my daughter swoon or cry out, strike off the arm.
Arwen stands above Frodo's head, her knife ready to cut into Frodo's wound. Behind her stands Elrond. He leans over and tenderly kisses his daughter. Gimli raises and lowers his axe above Frodo's arm, measuring the arc of it. Arwen plunges the blade into the wound, skillfully opening it up. A gasp escapes the hobbits. Gimli's axe is about to cleave down as Arwen swoons, but she recovers and Gimli forbears. The tension is unbearable.
Enough. How long shall we fuss over a ring and a sick hobbit? I, Boromir, who forsook my people, who alone stand in arms against the enemy, to be at this council, for 10 days and nights I rode, and 2 great horses died of... Oh, Jesus. Lord Elrond, did you summon me to sing hymns over a halfling?
Boromir, the life of Elrond's daughter hangs in the scales. This is a struggle, a test of strength. between the power of Sauron and the power of the elves. If Arwen fails, the hobbit will fall under the dominion of Sauron.
Then we should take the ring.
Take it. You take it, Boromir.
Boromir leaps from the table and crosses to Frodo. Boromir reaches out his hand, straining towards the ring. An unseen force holds him back. Boromir's face strains with effort. The sinews rise on his arm. At last, Boromir withdraws his hand, defeated.
The hobbit is a pebble pinched between two great rocks.
Arwen
That's
still
you,
probes
Boromir.
inside
You're a
the-
great rock.
Arwen still probes inside the wound. She extracts from the wound a dark splinter and holds it aloft. A joyous cry sweeps up from the chorus. Frodo stirs. The impetuous Boromir leaps on the table with great shout of victory. Sam and Bilbo start forward, hope springing in their hearts.
Oh no, we'll live.
Hello, Sam.
It's warm. Mean in your hand, Mr. Frodo.
I think Sam forgot what his voice sounded like.
Must have been excitement indeed. Bilbo, I never thought.
Elrond is speaking, and Frodo strains to hear what he is saying. Gradually, the face grows clearer and the voice stronger. Frodo finds himself sitting at the round table. Elrond is making his opening speech, and the council has begun.
And the rings of power were forged by the elven smiths, but Sauron ensnared them. He learned the secret of the elves and betrayed them, and in the mountain of fire he secretly forged the One Ring to be master of all the rings of power.
What's the name of the show?
3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the
7 for the dwarf in their
in their
hall of
hall of
stone.
stone,
9
9
for the mortal men
doomed to die.
In the land of
Mordor, where the
where the
shadows
shadows lie. 1 for the
the
dark
Dark
lord
Lord
on his
on
dark
his dark
throne.
throne.
1 ring to rule them all. 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all, and in darkness find them.
While the voices chant, a group of actors in costume and masks, a motley assortment resembling the beings of Middle-earth, mounts onto the table in cortege. First come the elves, preceded by a ring juggler performing deftly with 3 glass rings shimmering with colors. Then follow the dwarves, led by a juggler who fares badly with 7 rings being harassed by a dragon, which other dwarves attempt to fight off. Then come the men with a woman juggler, as if you need to point that out, swaying like a belly dancer with 9 rings rotating on her arms and legs. The juggler is a beautiful woman, but on one side of her costume portrays a withered body in decay. A small mongrel dog jumps up onto the table and runs wildly around barking. A character who is a combination of Mick Jagger and Punch leaps up onto the table. Dressed in white and a strange robe of pleats. And whenever the pleats splay open, dark, garish colors burst forth. A harsh musical beat accompanies the character. He, Sauron, struts menacingly around the table. The others retreat in front of him.
Sauron is Mick Jagger.
Meets Punch.
Meets Punch, yeah.
I don't know how to do this menacingly.
Makes sense.
I am Sauron, Lord of the One Ring. I covered the 3. I long for the 7. I lust for the 9. To find them, bring them, rule them, find them.
My God, Mick Jagger!
That didn't sound anything like satisfaction.
Sauron is singing the Book of
Wait
Mormon.
a minute, we missed the very end of that song.
Yeah.
The very end of that song goes, bam, oh, bam.
With one hand, Sauron bounces a transparent ball around which a golden band is wrapped. The dog barks at him, wanting to play. Perversely, he throws the ball among the legs of the actors, and the dog bolts after it, retrieving it, growling viciously at any hand or leg attempting to touch it. A play has begun? Begun, okay. The stage is the table. The acting is stylized, emphatic, as in the Kabuki theater. The costumes are flamboyant and symbolize beings and entities of Middle-earth. The voices of the elves in the background function as a chorus. The outstanding characteristic of the play is the dog, forever playing and performing with the ball, the ring, and recognizing none of the players as his real master. The dog symbolizes fate and also the ring's own will. Dual
What?
roles. Yeah. We have a lot of dual
sure.
roles tonight. Yeah, why not?
Sure. Let's go with that.
They did a lot of cocaine in the
movies were
70s.
missing.
Sauron, also playing with the dog, struts up to the elven juggler, who, in an act of bravura, makes his 3 rings vanish.
The fairest rings of power, the elven lords hid them from him, and his hands never sullied them. And so today we keep our knowledge and power.
Sauron approaches the dwarf juggler who is fighting the dragon. The juggler becomes afraid and nervous. He drops his rings. Sauron laughs and picks them up.
7 rings of power the dwarf kings possessed. 3 Sauron took, and the others the dragons consumed. The power of the dwarves faded.
Sauron struts up to the woman juggling the 9 rings and starts to dance lasciviously in front of her in a different rhythm, distracting her from her performance. She becomes entranced by him. The rings fall to the floor, and Sauron picks them up, laughing triumphantly. And for each ring he picks up, one of the men goes into convulsions and emerges as a Black Rider.
Whoa.
The 9 rings of power which belonged to mortal men fell under the dominion of the One, and the 9 men who bore the rings fell under the dominion of Sauron, and they became the ring-wraiths, his most terrible servants, the Black Riders.
Now on the table are 2 groups facing each other, circling around, ready for battle. On the one hand, Sauron, backed by his 9 wraiths, and on the other, a group of elves and men. The 2 sides eye each other, ready to pounce. Sauron defiantly bounces the ball and makes the dog perform, and edges slowly towards the other groups.
I am Elendil, king of ancient Minas Tirith.
I am Gilgalad, High Lord of the Elves. We have gathered a great force on the slopes of
Mount Doom, Mountain of Fire,
to stay the murderous hand of Sauron, which wields the One Ring.
Men and elven warriors attack the wraiths while Elendil and Gilgalad rush Sauron. Elendil is pierced by Sauron's sword, but he throws himself at Sauron as Sauron turns towards Gilgalad. Sauron falls back onto Elendil, who, under Sauron's weight, crushes to the table, and Elendil's sword snaps in half. Gilgalad dives onto Sauron, impaling himself on Sauron's sword. Sauron is trapped. The ball rolls out of Sauron's hand, and the dog picks it up. Sauron is pulled away by the fleeting wraiths and looks back, agonized, as the dog runs off with the ball, playing and yelping. 2 dancers undulate a length of blue cloth to represent a river. The dog goes under it, puts down the ball, and goes to sleep.
And the ring was lost. It fell into the great river and vanished. There, in the dark pools, the ring passed out of knowledge and legend, and the 3 elven rings were released from the dominion of the One, and peace reigned for many years.
Under the undulating blue cloth, 2 creatures, a large fish in each of their mouths, crawl across the table. The hand of one falls on the ball at the side of the sleeping dog. Then, Tarzan-like, from out of the darkness, Sauron swings onto the table. He is attired in a negative version of his previous costume. He compulsively moves his hand and arm as if he was playing with the ball. He dances to a harsh beat. Here comes Sauron, another husk.
To be clear, this isn't a second script that was accidentally inserted.
This is the script that John Boorman wrote in 1970.
I'm pretty sure that
Where the drugs kick in.
I love it.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
In this new body of fate, I accept will be on hate.
At the same time, one of the creatures kills the other and makes off with the ball and dog, muttering, "Gollum, Gollum." Bilbo, seated at the table, points excitedly.
Gollum! He doesn't look like that.
Sauron continues to dance and growl his song. He edges in on Gollum while whirling a bull roarer. The bull roarer is in the shape of a socketless eye and makes a sinister drone as it spins. The eye of the bull roarer flushes with light when caught by the rays of the sun reflected from above, even though we're indoors. Onto the table comes 2 grand figures in wizard attire, one cloaked and concealed in a great white mantle, the other in gray, made up as Gandalf.
From over the seas, 2 great wizards appeared in Middle-earth in the guise of men, Saruman the White and Gandalf the Grey. They were messengers sent to contest the power of Sauron and to unite all those who had the will to resist him. But they were forbidden to match his power with power, or to seek to dominate elves or men by force of fear.
The real Gandalf looks uneasy.
Oh, I always look like that.
The white wizard began stalking Sauron, and in doing so could not avoid falling into imitations of his dancing, prancing strut. Sauron has nearly cornered Gollum, and Gandalf and Saruman are closing in on Sauron. The wizards collide into each other. Sauron throws open his cape and pulls his phony beard over his head. It looks like flowing blonde hair, and he behaves like a femme fatale. Sauron grabs Gandalf, and the two roll around the table.
Gandalf, let's join forces, old friend. We should wield the One Ring.
While rolling on the floor in order to pin down Gandalf and seduce him, Saruman can't help but glancing up at Sauron repeatedly and mimicking his movements.
I'm troubled to say, we, Saruman, only one hand at a time can wield the one.
Saruman becomes helplessly caught in Sauron's dance, and Gandalf pries himself loose.
He who studies the enemy too closely becomes too close to the enemy.
An actor made up as Bilbo, but much younger, steps onto the table, skipping across it, singing "The Road Goes Ever On and On." The ball falls accidentally into Bilbo's hand. Gollum goes for him. Bilbo, with a bland smile on his face, turns and holds out his two clenched fists, as if Gollum had to guess which hand the ball is concealed in. Gollum, dismayed, points at one hand. Bilbo pirouettes around once and holds out his hands again, which are now crossed one over the other. Bilbo opens the hand at which the Gollum has pointed. It is empty. Bilbo skips away, playing with the ball and the dog. Sauron is after him, and so is Gollum, but Bilbo is oblivious. He just skips happily away. Then a hand trips him up. It is Gandalf. He is standing at the edge of the table. He catches Bilbo, pulling him off the table into his arms, and retreats. In retreating, he reveals the real Gandalf, who stands up to speak.
And so, the ring abandoned Gollum only to be picked up by the most unlikely person imaginable, Bilbo of the Shire, my very dear friend.
And the enemy is getting stronger.
Stronger and stronger. Minas Tirith stands alone in arms against the mighty Sauron. That is the sword that was broken and lost. For our dream spoke such that if the sword of our ancestors was found, we would regain the glory of once.
Here's the sword that was broken.
What?
Who is this that bears the sword of Elendil?
This is the ranger who saved us from the riders.
A lonely ranger, but he is also Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and he descends from Elendil. If we quarrel, the laughter of Sauron will be our only reward, and I fear that his evil eye is already up in this council.
But Sauron lacks the One Ring. With that, his power will be complete. Can the ring be kept here in Rivendell?
Sauron can torture the very hills, and I have not the strength to withstand the enemy, for when all else is overthrown.
Could it not be hidden?
Chance already plucked it once from the riverbed, and his creatures would search it out under the earth or at the bottom of the sea.
But can we not wield it?
No! We cannot use the ring. The ring belongs to Sauron and is altogether evil. The very desire to wield it corrupts the heart.
We cannot keep it. We cannot hide it. We cannot wield it.
But it can be destroyed, and there is only one way. It must be sent to the fire in which it was forged, to the fire of Mount Doom, in the heart of Mordor, land of the enemy.
Very well, Master Elrond, say no more. I know who you're thinking of. Bilbo, that silly hobbit that started this affair, and...
But he cannot finish, frozen by the stern looks of Gandalf and Elrond.
I will take the ring, though I don't know the way.
Landscapes of Middle-earth, a grand open landscape of tree and hills. Against the sky, walking in line, are 9 figures of differing shapes and sizes. Superimposed across the scene is the face of Elrond, itself a landscape, his beard flowing into the grass, its hair entwining with the trees.
And the fellowship of the ring shall include all peoples, hobbit, elf, dwarf, and man.
Another landscape, open downs, waving grass.
For the men, Aragorn shall guard the ring-bearer. He is long in exile from his own land, a ceaseless and lonely hunter of the servants of the enemy. Boromir too shall lend his mighty arm at least as far as Minas Tirith.
Now they walk through an oak forest. Legolas walks across the treetops, gliding from branch to branch.
For the elves, Legolas, the tree elf lord, for he can read grass and leaf and will thread a safe path through all places where the roots are long and the years lie thick on the leaves.
Gimli the dwarf has taken up the lead next to Gandalf, and he stops and put his ear to a rock and listens.
For the dwarves, Gimli, lord of the axe, his ear shall tell the rumors of the earth and guide the ring-bearer through the dark places of the mountains.
A soft valley with meadows and a stream. The four hobbits are in gay mood, cavorting and laughing.
For the hobbits, besides Frodo, his servant Sam shall go, for his loyalty and love. And Merry and Pippin shall travel for friendship's sake and for the honor of the Shire.
Gandalf turns his weary old face to watch the hobbits at play. He frowns.
And Gandalf the Grey shall lead the fellowship, and his wisdom and his wizardry shall aid the ring-bearer to his destiny.
Is it madness to send this hobbit?
Elrond's face appears again, superimposed in the landscape, his colors blending with the countryside. The hobbits appear to be running and jumping across his cheeks, climbing over his nose, sliding down his chin. He answers Gandalf.
Is it madness to send this hobbit, Gandalf?
And folly must win where wisdom fails. The play is written. We may prompt the players, Elrond, you and I, nothing more.
Are you talking to yourself, Master Gandalf?
In the company of fools, the wise man seeks counsel with himself.
Merry and Pippin laugh and skip on ahead to join Frodo and Sam.
And Arwen shall be a light in their hearts, to guide their way.
Frodo points excitedly ahead. He sees a vision of Arwen in a white gossamer dress. She smiles and beckons him on. The hobbits run excitedly up the left-hand path, but as they come closer, Arwen fades and disappears.
Which is the safer path, Gandalf?
I suggest we follow the halflings.
Evening, a brooding landscape of rock, shapes, and clumps of trees. They walk through it. The hobbits are quiet now, a little frightened by the ominous surroundings. Merry clutches Gimli's arm and points at a lifelike shape of a rock.
That be a troll?
I hear nothing but the night speech of plant and stone.
Boromir overhears their exchange, and with a dramatic war cry, he draws his sword and leaps into the air. With comic, exaggerated gestures, he challenges the troll-like shape and pretends to slash and strike it. Then he clutches his stomach as though wounded and pirouettes crazily, falling down in an agonized parody of death. The hobbits laugh delightedly because they're sick bastards.
It's called foreshadowing.
Spoiler alert if you haven't read Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I've lost the accent. Dying and laughing and growing and waning are caught in the struggle, for the many are part of the one, and not leaf nor pebble, nor fire nor water, nor earth nor air shall escape evil, if the quest shall fail.
Roots of a tree fantastically entwined in rocks. Gimli and Legolas sit together, looking at the roots and rocks. Frodo is tired, but he listens to them keenly.
There is the meeting place of the dwarf and elf, tree and rock.
And you see how, like the roots, given time, will split with the very stone.
Stones may crack, but the tree will perish.
Frodo tries hard to keep his eyes open. He glances at a gap in the trees, and there to his surprise is Bilbo working at his desk, surrounded by his books and a little bed. Bilbo looks up and smiles at Frodo.
Still trying to finish the book about my adventures. Frodo, it passes the time. The time doesn't seem to pass in Rivendell. It just is. Now, you're off on your own adventure. I want to give you this.
He picks up a small sword and shows it to Frodo, who walks into the little study. The blade glitters, cold and bright.
This is Sting. It's rather special. The dwarves gave it to me. I shan't want it again, I expect. Oh, I almost forgot. If there's any orcs about, the blade glows blue with a blue fire. Very useful. Goodbye, Frodo, my dear. Dear nephew. Let me see you just once more before I die.
Frodo looks acutely embarrassed. Reluctantly, he pulls out the ring and holds it up to Bilbo. Bilbo's trembling hand reaches out towards it. Frodo feels a growing revulsion for the old man. He pulls the ring sharply away.
No, no.
I'm sorry. Sorry you've come into this burden. Don't adventures ever have an end? I suppose not. Someone else always has to carry on the story.
It is dawn. Boromir is shaking Frodo awake. Frodo opens his eyes. The ring has fallen out of his tunic and is hanging free on his chain. Boromir is looking at it with a kind of embarrassed grin. Frodo jumps up in alarm, wrenching free of Boromir. He hastily stuffs the ring back under his tunic. I think Boromir muted.
Steady now. Time to go on.
The nine are tracking over a flat, barren, rocky land. Legolas spots something in the distant sky. They scatter to the sparse rocks and bushes. Aragorn and Boromir grab the hobbits and pull them into hiding, flattening themselves to the ground. A great flock of birds is zigzagging across the sky, wheeling and circling as if searching the land. Their shrill crying becomes louder, till unbearable, as if the flock of birds passes overhead. As they cross the sun, the whole land darkens and becomes a pattern of speckled patches of light and shade.
For all things, bird and beast, tree and rock, are falling under Sauron's dominion. His tentacles search out and scour the land.
Wear these cloaks, for they will turn away the sight of unfriendly eyes.
And the hobbits are back in Rivendell. Arwen and the elf maids are fitting cloaks on each of them.
Are they magic?
Magic. Thus do men and hobbits hang words on things to cover the truth.
Then she gives them each a little parcel of food containing thin cakes wrapped in leaves. Merry looks at his disdainfully.
Taste one, Mary.
Merry does so with a sour face, but it quickly transforms to pleasure. He takes another bite.
Quite amazing.
No more. One cake will keep a traveler on his feet for a day's march.
Is this whey bread that is spoke of in elf legends?
It is called lembas in our tongue. Eat it only in mead.
She smiles and strokes Mary's hair.
It tastes like
any food, like any food you think of while you're eating it.
Merry and Pippin are sneaking bites of the delectable lembas, making sure they are not observed. Their faces are absorbed, expressions ecstatic.
leek soup,
Honey cake.
bread and butter pudding,
My bubble and squeak.
goat cheese,
Cherry pie.
Cod liver oil.
Merry and Pippin choke on the lembas, eyes returning to pain. They look up guiltily at Gandalf.
Beware, foolish halflings, remember this. All magic is both good and bad, and always dangerous.
Another camp, a dim fire. Boromir and Aragorn converse earnestly in low voices. Frodo awakens and strains to catch their words.
Aragorn, give it to me. Let me take it to Minas Tirith and reforge it. For the great sword of Elendil would be a scourge to the enemy and give hope to our people.
I cannot give it except to the rightful king. For it is written that when the king returns to Minas Tirith, he shall be known by many signs, and will reforge the sword that was broken.
Then let force of arms decide.
He snatches one half of the sword from Aragorn's belt, and Aragorn angrily draws the other. They match up to each other, and at the first clash, there is a flash of light. They stop, momentarily blinded. Arwen appears between them. She holds out her hands, touching their foreheads. They bend their knees and bow their swords in homage to her.
Peace. The quest must not fail in the quarrels of the fellowship. Each of you shall bear one half of the sword that was broken.
Boromir and Aragorn bend the two sword halves to her. She kisses each blade on their keen edges. She looks up and there is blood on her lips. She goes first to Aragorn and kisses his mouth, then to Boromir and kisses his. Her blood is on their blades and on their mouths.
Aragorn and Boromir, I bind you in the brotherhood with my blood.
The two men bend their knees and kiss the thighs of her dress. They are both deeply moved. Boromir weeps openly, and a tear starts out of Aragorn's gray eyes. They rise up, and Boromir kisses Aragorn's mouth. They turn back to Arwen, but she is gone. They're just making out like two guys. Frodo watches it all. The embers glow. Boromir and Aragorn resume their watches. The nine scramble.
Action like nothing just happened.
Yep, that happened. Okay.
Yeah.
The nine scramble up a steep, stony slope in view of the Misty Mountains. In front of the nine are the Misty Mountains, a chain of mighty peaks, snow-shrouded.
Redhorn, Hardharge, the cruel, cloudy head. Oh, the misty mountains, they stand tall in my dreams.
Which of these is Mount Doom? I was expecting fire and smoke.
Mount Doom, it lies far beyond the misty mountains.
Over the mountains? Is that the only way?
No, there is another way. Beneath the mountains is great dwarf kingdom of once. But now the doors are closed and lost, and the great halls empty. Terrible things befell the dwarves, and they were driven out.
Stop crying, Gimli, and collect some wood.
High Mountains Day, the wind and the blizzard get progressively worse.
This weather is a trick of the enemy.
Glacier Day, the nine are trekking across a glacier. The wind howls and the snow swirls around them, driving over the surface of the ice. Merry slips, dragging down the others. They lie on the ice, exhausted, incapable of going on. Gandalf stands up and rhetorically makes a grand gesture with his hands.
Accursed Sauron, I command your winds.
A blast of wind knocks his hand into his face. Boromir and Aragorn have already gathered wood together. Gandalf extracts from his cloak a flask from which he sprinkles powder over the wood. He ignites the wood with tinder and flint. All huddle around the fire. Suddenly, the moaning wind carries the howls of wild beasts.
Wargs.
Wargs!
Draw your blades. Form a ring. Feed the fire.
They all form a tight circle around it and throw all the wood onto the fire. From out of the whirling snow, white creatures appear, rushing from all directions at the nine. The wargs are furry white mutants of men and animals, ferociously savage. Gimli, his stout legs apart, wields his axe. Legolas's bow sings, arrows fly. Aragorn's and Boromir's arms are hardly visible as they wield blades which cut into the flesh of the wargs. Wargs feast on their slain companions, but it does not stay their onslaught. Aragorn, Boromir, Gimli, and Legolas are retreating closer to the fire. Gandalf, staff and sword in hand, slays a warg which leaps at the hobbits. Frodo fights with Sting while the other hobbits, terrified, swing burning sticks. Suddenly, Gandalf rips off the hobbits' cloaks, thrusting them into the fire. The cloaks, I'm assuming. The cloaks burn, creating an enormous roaring blaze. The wargs jump back in fear. From the fire, a multicolored smoke billows up. The smoke seems made of flowers and leaves. It is whipped away by the blasts of wind. Gandalf has extracted a drinking flask from his cloak.
Have some of this.
He thrusts the flask into Sam's mouth, rips it away, and thrusts it into Pippin's. Immediately, the hobbits become tipsy and giggly. Now Gandalf brutally grabs the hobbits and lays them on the ice where the water is gushing away from under the fire and refreezing. Gandalf jumps to Frodo's side. He rotates his fingers on Frodo's eyeballs, and he jumps to Merry's side. Frodo's eyeballs continue to rotate. I don't know either. The rhythm of his breath slows down. Gandalf motions Legolas
so good.
He works on him, then Gimli, then Boromir. Aragorn stands over the bodies of his companions as Gandalf works on them and fights furiously to ward off the wargs. Then Gandalf pours out of the fire fistfuls of salts and powders. The fire blazes. The wargs retreat, blinded. Aragorn lies down, takes a sip of Gandalf's drink, and the wizard works on his eyes. Then Gandalf takes a swig, lies down himself, rotating his own eyes. The blaze of the fire subsides. Water gushes over the nine, freezing around them and over them. Their expressions are placid, if not silly. Merry's fat face is still out of the ice. He is giggling to himself.
The warg that you hear is worse than The orc that you fear.
But where the warg howls, there also the orc prowls.
The companions are caught in helpless and infectious giggles as they drift into unconsciousness. The water flows over their faces, freezing them into the ice. Gandalf's face is the last to be covered. The tip of his long nose disappears beneath the rising surface of the water. A warg leaps at it viciously, its jaws smash against the ice. From under the ice, Gandalf sees fangs just an inch from his face. The wargs teeming above the nine furiously bite and paw at the ice. Glacier, day and night. Beneath the ice, deep down, the bodies of the nine are suspended inside the glacier. Night, the red glow of a rising sun shines through drifting snow and impregnates the glacier with a pink tint. Mouth of the glacier, day. Great blocks of ice break off. The course of the stream is slower now. The blocks of ice are melting. In some of the blocks, it is possible to see bodies. Further downstream, the bodies of the nine are thawing out of the remnants of the blocks of ice. The nine bodies are floating and churning in the eddies, which seems to reanimate their limbs. Moving uneasily, Gandalf, Aragorn, and Boromir grab the floating bodies of the hobbits and fish them out. Carrying the hobbits, they stagger towards the bank. By the stream, the setting is truly idyllic, with trees, flowers, and grass. The nine lie on the bank, loosening their muscles and joints, still unable to talk. The hobbits take to jumping around. Gandalf has hung up his immense cloak to dry on a branch of a tree. The others are lying on the grass, basking in the sun, half undressed, their clothes and possessions spread out. Sam offers to help Frodo undress, but Frodo is reluctant to expose the ring hanging on its chain.
It's very strange. The moon's the same as when we're in Rivendell. It's out of its running, or I'm all wrong in my reckoning.
It hasn't been a month since we left Rivendell. Or has it? Or 2 months, or 3, or 1,003, or has time stood still?
Nay, time does not tarry ever. But change and growth is not in all things and places alike, dude. For the elves, the world moves both very swift and very slow. Swift because they themselves change little, while all else fleets by. Slow because they do not count the running years, not for themselves, man. Yet beneath the sun, all things must wear to an end at last.
They all meditate on these words.
So, like, is it autumn or is it spring?
Time has overtaken us, I fear. The mountains have refused us passage. No other resort is there but to pass through Moria.
Moria.
Steps and door to Moria, day. Gandalf, making leverage on his staff, pries open a clump of brambles. He finds what he's looking for, a flight of stone steps long since overgrown. The nine ascend the flight of steps.
Steps to the great door. Here elves and dwarves traded together in better days.
It was not the fault of the dwarves that the friendship waned.
I have not heard that it was the fault of the elves.
I have heard both and will hear no more.
The steps come to an abrupt end against a blank wall of rock into which weeds have sunken their roots. There is no sign of a door. Mary is out of breath.
Well, that was a long climb for nothing. They must have taken the door with them when they left.
Gandalf runs his staff across the surface. A patina of dust falls off. On the surface of the stone, faint lines appear, like veins of silver. They form into a pattern. Design emerges, an axe, such as Gimli's, surmounted by 7 rings. Beneath these are mounds of precious ores, each bearing a different phase of the moon, and a star with many rays.
The emblems of the ancient kingdom of Moria.
Boromir is searching for a crack or a hinge, but in vain. Gandalf taps his staff along some hieroglyphics.
What does it say?
It says, sing, friend, and enter.
You speak the ancient dwarf tongue?
Read it, not speak it.
Sing, friend, and enter.
But of course, Mr. Frodo, you sing the word friend, and the magical dwarvish door shall open. Isn't that so, Gimli? Gimli, sing friend in your ancient tongue.
My ancestors were driven from Moria. The ancient tongue is lost.
A few trials will open it.
Gandalf chants a succession of guttural words. The door does not bulge. Boromir laughs nervously. He begins aping Gandalf, mimicking his voice. The hobbits laugh. Boromir is carried away by his performance. Anger rises in Gandalf.
If a great wizard cannot open the door, let's see if it will withstand the voice of Minas Tirith.
He takes the horn and blows a blast upon it. With a battle cry, he hurls himself against the rock. He bounces off of it, falling onto his back, and lies there rubbing his shoulder. The hobbits roar with laughter, and Boromir joins in good-naturedly. Gandalf advances on Gimli, who retreats, terrified.
Only Gimli has the memory to open the door. You greedy dwarves!
Gimli falls backward as if the power of Gandalf's voice has knocked him to the ground. Gandalf grabs him and thrusts him into a spiky and dusty bush of gorse. Gimli is terrified, unable to talk. He slides to the ground and brandishes his axe. The others jump back in fear.
Greedy dwarves, just dig, dig, dig for precious metals. Dig. You greedy dwarf!
Gimli begins cutting into the ground with his axe and chopping through rocks. Working with animal fury, he digs away, scooping out the earth. He burrows into the ground like a mole.
Greed, greed, greed.
Yes, dig deep. Delve into the depths of the earth, greedy dwarf.
At which Gandalf strikes Gimli with his staff. He howls and digs even faster. Earth flies out of the hole. Gandalf swirls off his cloak and casts it onto Gimli, covering him. With his staff, he thrashes at the shape beneath the cloak. In the darkness, Gimli goes on digging frantically.
And the greedy dwarves delved too deep into the bowels of the earth and stirred evil things, and from the abyss and the eternal darkness, monsters arose and drove out the dwarves from Moria.
Under the darkness of the cloak, Gimli is frantically attempting to escape as he relives the ancestral memory Gandalf is recalling.
And a terrible monster rose out of the depths.
Gandalf roars like a monster as if he was play acting to a child. Gimli, distraught with fear and panic, is trapped beneath Gandalf's cloak. He howls with despair, then mumbles in an ancient guttural tongue. Gandalf whips his cloak away and onto his back. Gimli rises to his feet, waist deep in the hole. His eyes are filled with tears. He looks up to Gandalf, exhausted but grateful. Gandalf stretches out his hand and helps Gimli out. In his ancient tongue, he thanks Gandalf, kneeling at his feet, kissing his hands.
Thank me not, Gimli, until I can thank you. Open the door to Moria.
Gimli walks up to the door. Gimli stamps his feet and begins dancing. He repeats a word in his harsh, guttural chant, repeating it in different rhythms and tones.
A real jaw cracker, all right, this dwarf tongue.
And the mountain cracks open.
On the rock face, the shape of a door appears, then hinges open. Boromir and Legolas and the excited hobbits rush to embrace Gimli. Legolas wipes the sweat from Gimli's brow. Gandalf sighs with relief. He is drained, and his step falters. Only Aragorn notices and lends the old wizard his arm.
Too soon on this journey, I have called up the very roots of my powers. I fear that when greater challenges come, I may be used up. Gimli, I thank you, but let us not rejoice, for we enter a place once of glory, now of dread.
The entrance chamber of Moria. The doors close, enveloping the fellowship in blackness and a deathly quiet. Only Gandalf's staff glows as he crosses to lead the way, their eyes accustomed to the dark. They are in a large, round chamber. At the far side, a tunnel leads off into deeper darkness. They become aware of a whispered sound. It is faint and distant, but is repeated in an endless echo.
Precious, precious, precious.
Golem says,
The sentence is cut off by Gandalf's hand clamping over Frodo's mouth, but the words that did escape chase the other around the echo chamber, rising from a whisper rapidly to a shout. Gollum says precious, Gollum says precious, Gollum says precious. Gandalf hurries them out of the chamber into the far tunnel. Interior Moria. Day.
Yes, yes, the chamber is a device to warn of intruders. Are the dwarves of once.
I'm sorry, Gandalf, but that voice.
It was Gollum, and his voice is still fresh. Keep in file. You, Aragorn, take up the rear, and Gimli, help me find a way.
They start to walk. The hobbits can barely see anything except the glow of Gandalf's staff, but Frodo notices that Gandalf holds his sword in his other hand. Gandalf cries out a warning and stops abruptly, but Pippin, who is just behind, fails to stop and plunges into darkness. Gandalf grabs his foot and pulls him up. Pippin is trembling.
I dropped my frying pan.
Why didn't it fall?
Probably still falling.
A moment later, they hear a faint and distant sound of metal striking rock. Pippin shudders at the thought of it. The tunnel opens into a large space. Gandalf frowns.
Now we have many choices.
But why, dear Gimli, did dwarves want to live in these dark holes?
Holes! This is the great kingdom and city of Moria. Once it was not dark, but full of light and splendor.
The staff spins up in a great arc, illuminating for a second or two a magnificent high-vaulted roof suspended on great carved pillars. It seemed to grow out of the floor like muscles and tendons of stone. They gasped at its splendor. They had no idea they were in such a place.
More to the point, which of these passages will take us to the other side of the mountain?
Are there still piles of gold and jewels lying about?
No, the orcs plundered Moria after the dwarves were driven out.
Gandalf moves from arch to arch along the perimeter of the vast hall. Gandalf thrusts his staff into the darkness and whips it so that it oscillates. He mutters a spell and a great flash of light springs from his staff.
See, dwarves are not just moles scratching in dirty holes.
The air in here is less foul. This is our best chance. Come.
Look, master, how Sting glows.
Frodo draws Sting, his sword, which glows with a fierce blue light.
So it does. That means orcs. Orcs!
Panic. The news is passed along in bated, whispered breaths. Orcs, orcs,
orcs.
All draw their weapons. A percussive beat breaks the silence. Then it is answered by another, then another. Gandalf calls a halt, listening, perplexed. He lifts his staff and taps it on the ground. The ground responds with a strong drum-like beat, and then another. Gandalf stoops to examine the ground. What he sees horrifies him. His staff is tapping on the chest of an inert orc, which suddenly stirs, its heart pulsating and resounding.
What? Wait, I'm sorry. The orcs are in the stuff around them?
They're zombies.
Zombie orcs.
It's zombie orcs. Got it.
Zombie
Okay.
orcs.
Orcs, run!
He swings his staff and it throws off a vivid swath of light. They see that the rough ground around them is covered with inert orcs. Orcs are human-like creatures with reptile and bird-like features. A kind of armor grows spontaneously from their bodies. The companions run and scramble over the inert bodies.
Pop another shroom, it'll make sense.
Mary.
Did we lose a hobbit?
Page 65, Mary.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
But they're dead.
Not dead. A blow will revive their filthy lives. Run!
Whoa.
Orc, which Gandalf struck with his staff, is staggering to his feet, beating his chest viciously. Its heartbeat resounds clearly. It gains energy. He kicks another orc in the chest, who also stirs and then beats his chest in turn to get his heart going. The awakening of the orcs gains momentum. They pursue the fellowship. Some orcs rise up in their midst, blocking their way. Gandalf and Aragorn smite them down before they gain full powers, and the writer comes up with more mythology. Ahead in the tunnel, a glimmer of daylight. Legolas points towards it.
Hope sends a message to our black hour.
The orcs are held back by Gimli, whose rage has added enormous strength to his prowess. He conducts a one-man massacre, scything down orcs as they arise. The hobbits fight by his side, darting in and out, hacking at the scaly shins of the orcs. The orc assailing Frodo is impaled on Sting and falls onto him. Frodo is between an orc which is reviving and a dead orc. Boromir sees Frodo and pulls him out, but the dead orc has grasped Frodo's wrist in the deathlock. Boromir cannot break the orc away, so he hacks off the hand. Frodo runs off, the hand hanging from his wrist. Aragorn, wielding his sword, defends them.
Gimli, I command you, fall back.
Reluctantly, he does so. Way of the mountain is clear now. There is more light, and ahead a narrow bridge of rotting rope and wood spans a chasm of some 20 feet across. The chasm glows dimly with firelight.
Quick, over the bridge, fly.
A huge creature wreathed in flame, whose soft body changes in shape, moves toward them, barring their way to the bridge. Its presence makes a huge, strange humming sound.
The Balrog, the bane of greedy dwarves.
The orcs scream and cover their eyes, holding back as the creature rises up. The hobbits are struck with horror. Gandalf throws an anguished look in their direction.
Cross while you can.
But the Balrog has a paralyzing effect. Frodo feels for the ring and holds it. He has a powerful desire to put it on. Gandalf sees what he is doing and strikes Frodo's hand with his staff. The companions, desperately trying to reach the bridge with strange, slow movements, but it is as if they are climbing back an impossibly steep hill, for they slide and slip back. A yellow, dazzling glow emanates from the creature and fills the cavern.
You cannot pass.
The Balrog's fire and sound fade for a moment. The companions feel the spell weaken.
Across the bridge!
With the flat of his sword, he drives the sleepwalking hobbits towards the bridge.
It has gutted and filleted me. Oh, Gondor, forgive me.
The Balrog grows in power again. Only Gandalf stands between them. He utters a great cry and strikes the Balrog with his staff. The staff incinerates and Gandalf plunges his sword into the belly of fire. The creature closes around Gandalf, engulfing him. But the force of Gandalf's attack drives it back and it crashes through the bridge into the abyss. The bridge is torn apart. Gandalf and the Balrog spin down into the fiery deeps, clutched in mortal combat. The broken rope bridge hangs precariously into the chasm. At last, they disappear from sight. And suddenly, flames leap up from the growing chasm. The fire changes in color to a deep blue. Meanwhile, the orcs resume their attack. Orcs try to leap the chasm. None can achieve it, and they plunge into the flames. Some even use each other as stepping stones, leaping on the back of one who has already jumped out. Swords and rocks, however, do cross the gap, and the fellowship is forced back. Frodo cannot tear his eyes away from the pit, but the others lead him off, and they retreat towards the light with dismay in their hearts. A lake, sunset. The fellowship limps on in silence across the dusty land. Their wounds from Moria are dressed with leaf poultices. They look tired, bedraggled, and dispirited. I think he's making up words now. And dispirited. No one speaks. Legolas's face brightens as he looks ahead. Gradually, one by one, they see the glad sight that Legolas sees. Their parched lips crack into smiles, and painfully, hobbling along, they quicken the pace. They break into a loping run. Flowers circle the lake, and lilies adorn the water, which is fed by a slender waterfall. It is idyllic, dreamlike, a wild garden of Eden. The 8 tired companions stumble into the water up to their knees, then collapse into it, moaning with relief.
Ah, the pungent fragrance of the waters. Pungent's good, right?
Aragorn helps Frodo take off his clothes. The water runs over their limbs and fatigued faces, easing aches and wounds. The hobbits quickly recover their spirits.
I say hooray for a bath at close of day that washes the weary mud away, and never did fountain sound as sweet as the splashing of water made by my feet.
The ring dances in the incandescent waters. The others draw closer to help Aragorn. They have all taken off most of their clothes and are caught in the spell of the waters.
I feel as if I was inside a song.
A figure surfaces out of the waters before him. She is a tall and beautiful woman of elven features, sparsely clad, statuesque, aloof. As she rises to her feet, the others see her and start in wonder and alarm, ready to draw their weapons. She addresses someone behind them.
They are not to be feared.
Where previously there had been trees and bushes, a large opening. A hole seems to have been cut in the landscape. They discern the vague outline of a great tent in which there are true-to-life representations that blend in perfectly with the surroundings. The company turn their eyes away from the tent back to her. Just Aragorn and Legolas endure her glance, while Boromir is confused, looking away and glancing back again seductively.
Not since the broader days when I was queen in my own land have I seen elf and man and dwarf and halfling together.
We're hobbits, not halflings.
Oh, Galadriel. You are Galadriel of the mirror.
Legolas, strumming on his bow, breaks into a bird-like dance. Which bird?
Your beauty plucks at my heart as a bird seeks out the fruit among the leaves.
While Legolas performs, Gimli's eyes drift across Galadriel's body. He tosses and catches his axe, looking tough. Boromir is puffing himself up and throws back his cloak to reveal his muscles, while Aragorn takes up a stance of dignified nobility.
Truly an awesome quest this company has set upon, for you bear the sword that was broken and not forged again.
Gandalf, the gray wizard, was our guide, but he has fallen and we are lost, and we have great need to look in your mirror.
Oh, Gandalf. Gandalf is gone.
Gandalf, I knew him once, before he took the guise of man.
The finest rockets ever seen. They burst in stars
of blue and green.
Silver
spray and golden showers. Come falling like a rain of hours.
His busy his busy eyebrows, his riddles, his quick temper, the secrets of his cloak.
I had no idea the Backstreet Boys were here.
I think we just made a pee-pee tape.
You are the true mirror of beauty, Lady of the Mirror. I am Boromir, and my father Denethor is the steward of the great city of Minas Tirith, which alone stands in arms against the common enemy.
Boromir, with a flush of passion, takes her in his arms and kisses her. She remains aloof and unresponsive. His ardor withers, and he turns away with a bitter cry of humiliation.
She's a pretty flower, but she badly needs water and stones.
Great. Her eyes and Sam blushes. Galadriel betrays a faint smile of amusement. Frodo is still running water over his bruise, his expression innocent and sad. Galadriel stoops down beside Frodo and trickles water over his fading bruise. Her hand moves across his chest, touching the ring. The others gasp. She senses the sudden tension, but Frodo remains tranquil. Mary steps up with servile aplomb and begins to wring out her beautiful long hair.
A lot of fuss is made about you, halfling.
Hobbit?
She turns on Pippin with a cold look. Frodo points to one of Pippin's stones bouncing over the water.
Look, if it floats, we're hobbits. If it sinks, we're halflings.
At these strange words, they all turn to watch. The bouncing stone disappears behind a bend. Frodo and Galadriel look into each other's eyes. Frodo smiles shyly. She shakes out her mane of hair and looks at Frodo in a way that is not without warmth. She whips her hair and draws closer to him. Her hair is like a net in a halo which engulfs Frodo, enveloping him.
Lauren, I can feel the sexual tension here.
Me too.
Not without warmth.
Not without
You
warmth.
shall look into the mirror, and you alone.
Galadriel's pavilion, night. It is a soft space defined by drapes at the summit of the great tent, partially open to a bright starlit sky. Galadriel and Frodo are seated on a floor of carpets and cushions. Between them is a small silver basin on a tripod. In the basin there is water. Frodo looks into it and sees only the water.
I look and I see nothing.
You look and you see nothing, for you are not yet ready.
When shall I be ready and how?
With knowledge, and I am that knowledge.
I don't know what questions I should ask.
Your eyes ask questions already.
Accepting the invitation, his eyes wander over her body, drinking in its loveliness. Galadriel's austere and aloof features soften. Galadriel's hand touches the chain from which the ring dangles, and Frodo's hand takes hers. Frodo looks again into the reflection in the basin and sees their two faces come together and kiss. Interior tent, night. The mules chew, stamp, and lick their tails. Their relentlessness
Wow.
reflects that of the fellowship now that Frodo is with Galadriel. Gimli sharpens his axe. Sparks fly. Boromir and Legolas clean their short sword blades.
I'm sure.
Galadriel, a mighty piece of stone she is for a dwarfish tool to carve.
She wants to read our thoughts for her own good purposes. We may be safe from the orcs tonight, but I fear for the ring. I fear for Frodo, but I mainly fear for the ring.
What told him Frodo? Why doesn't he come?
I think Galadriel's asking the same thing. Merry bites on Olympus. He rolls it in his mouth, savoring the taste ecstatically.
Galadriel.
To evil ways this company has been led. I shall take the south bank of the great river and go to Minas Tirith. It is my duty. It is folly to enter Mordor without a great army.
Folly may also be our duty. I shall take the north bank to Mordor. Tonight, Frodo can fend for himself, and for once we may sleep in peace.
Why did I come on this quest? I saw Moria overrun by orcs and Gandalf fall, and now I see beauty, and even that is taken from me.
The others have settled down to sleep. Gimli sluggishly continues sharpening his axe.
Alas for us all, but Gimli, memory shall be your reward.
Memory is not what I ache for, dear Legolas.
Unwittingly, Gimli runs his finger along the gleaming edge of his axe. He reacts with an aggrieved howl. Legolas, who is dozing off, smiles. The others fidget in turn as they seek elusive sleep. Sky, sunrise. Gimli's howl transforms into a sensual cry, and now it sounds more like Frodo's voice. On the horizon, a red glow appears. The cry thins out into a pure musical sound. The first rays of the sun appear. The lake, dawn. Galadriel and Frodo are floating in the waters of the pool. It is very still. They do not move for fear of disturbing the perfection of the moment.
I will look into the mirror. I'm ready. I feel ready.
Galadriel's hair drifts through the water and rests on Frodo's chest. A ring that he has not seen before lies on her finger, and a halo of light emanates from it.
So you see it. It is one of the elven rings of power. They are hidden, but it cannot be hidden from the bearer of the one who will know the eye.
You're wise and fearless. To you the ring should be entrusted.
She holds the ring against the elven ring to see how they look together. An ugly grimace comes over her face. She is afraid, trembles.
I cannot give it, and you cannot bear it.
If you fail in your quest, we are laid bare to the enemy. But if you succeed and destroy the ring, our powers will fade too, and the elves will dwindle to a rustic folk of dell and cave, slowly to forget and to be forgotten.
No, never will the power of the elves die, for what I felt in you is the stuff of which all life is made.
After we have gone, our powers may find a small place in our hearts of women. In other women, you will remember me. In them, men will sometimes find a fleeting vision of what we were. Now the world is full of peril. Love is now mingled with grief. With grief, love grows, perhaps even greater.
Aragorn, Boromir, Legolas, and Gimli and the hobbits file out.
I say we take the south bank.
The north bank should be our course.
They look angrily at Frodo, but he faces them calmly and squarely, standing a little in front of Galadriel. They notice his new assurance, and their determined, aggressive manner melts into uncertainty.
I have looked into the mirror.
River, day. A strange spectacle. The 8 members of the Fellowship apparently glide across the landscape of trees and grasses. They move without ever taking a stop. Closer inspection reveals a river. They are drifting downstream on a large improvised raft made of rushes and reeds.
There is no alarm among the birds. The trees are at peace, man.
Peace. It sits on me like rust upon a sword.
I must agree that all this rest is very tiring.
Mary chews on Olympus.
Raspberry jam. I'm sick of raspberry jam.
Lord large elf, the trees. They seem to bow and curtsy as mass, or does the breeze bend them?
Too perfect, as though your garden in the Shire stopped growing weeds, Sam.
Fuck you, Fern.
Leaves, others can grow it. Hold on. His eyes are skinned for weeds. There's weeds everywhere, Mr. Frodo.
Even here?
Last night there was a log floating by us. I was half asleep.
And it had eyes, didn't it?
You saw it too.
I wasn't sure. This river journey, it's hard to tell between waking and sleeping.
It got me thinking about that play acting at the council.
We could both put a name to it, Sam.
It is then.
Yes, Golem.
Raft and river, night. The raft drifts down the center of the river. The log is by the side of the raft, two eyes peering up. Sam stealthily wakes Frodo. The log slips into the shadows, but they hear a hissing of breath at the edge of the raft. Suddenly, Aragorn is at their side, and his sword cleaves down into the water, but Frodo stays his hand, and a dark shape darts away through the water.
Why?
Frodo does not reply. Aragorn and Frodo look hard into each other's eyes. There is a new understanding between them. Boromir stirs in his sleep.
A strong man's fears hide in his dreams. The peaceful river conceals Gollum.
And a foolish hobbit bears the ring.
Not all is what it seems.
Aragorn smiles. River and raft, rapids. Gimli awakes and sits up listening.
I hear the rapids.
I hear nothing.
Gimli's ear reaches farther than yours. Farther, come on. Strive for the riverbank.
Then a whoosh of bowstrings accompanied by fierce, blood-curdling cries breaks upon them.
Orcs, at last.
A great flight of arrows rises out of the trees. Each arrow trails a strip of black cloth. They are so dense it seems as though a thundercloud is darkening the sky. The arrows strike the raft and water like hailstones. The 8 shield themselves as best they can. One shaft strikes the frying pan, which Sam holds above Frodo's head.
Back! Paddle for your lives! The far bank!
Some of the orcs rush forward from the trees and wade into the water. More arrows rain down upon them and around them. The companions drive the raft furiously towards the other bank. Merry is struck in the arm with an arrow.
I'm hit! I'm wounded! I'm dying!
Legolas skillfully slits around the arrow, extracts it. He inserts into the slit a special leaf which he plucks from his dress.
It is slight. This will draw the poison.
Another flight of arrows sings out from orcs. Boromir is struck in the leg. Sam is hit on his bare foot. An arrow strikes Gimli in his side. They are soon out of arrow range. Legolas laughs grimly.
The same force that draws us from the arrows drives us into the rapids.
Aragorn fights desperately to keep the raft in control.
Lash down the hobbits. Tie the ring bearer by me at the stern.
Spray mingles with blood and blood mingles with sweat as they battle for survival. Before they can complete their tasks, the rapids take them. Boromir pins the hobbits by lying spread eagle over them. Okay, doing that again. The raft plunges over a cataract and lands in swirling, turbulent waters. It spins into a shallow pool and runs aground. Aragorn slumps over the helm. The others lie panting and bleeding, half drowned. The rapids have ceased. The river flows on, winding away into the distance, looking much like the road that began their journey. The musical theme of The Road Goes Ever On reinforces this impression. Intermission. And that's where we'll stop for tonight, because that's 2 hours. That's about what I was guessing it'd be. And we can finish this at another date. Yeah. That's a lot, huh?
It is.
That's a lot.
Okay, it's obvious that John Boorman could afford better drugs than my friends and I when we wrote the Lord of the Rings.
But
And I'll say, I
Go ahead.
I like all this seductive dancing.
Mm-hmm. Like, in theory, a play about the ring in Rivendell sounds like a good idea instead of just like someone talking the whole thing out. Like, that's an interesting idea in theory, but the way he wrote it was just like, what were you on?
Yep.
I did not
A lot of
expect a
different
Mick
things.
Jagger reference.
Yeah.
I,
Because he was jumping up on a table and dancing around.
oh, sure.
I am
but
so
two
sorry
different
that
worlds.
this wasn't actually produced.
I'm kind of sad it doesn't exist. I'm not saying it'd be good, but it'd be interesting.
Mick
Yeah.
Jagger's still alive. We can still do this.
Al Pacino is Frodo, Mick Jagger is Sauron.
I swear to God, even by the standards of the 70s, this is probably the most homoerotic version of Lord of the Rings I ever read. Like, these descriptions go out of their way to have every single character has sexual tension with every other character.
My favorite part is they already knew.
Make out.
Mm-hmm.
And
They already
Frodo
knew
watched.
that the budget was fucked. So every fight scene is like heavy fog, splashing water, a snowstorm. We can't see exactly what's happening.
But also the budget can afford a Balrog, apparently.
Can you imagine what a 1970 Balrog would look like?
Well, watch the animated version, I guess. It looks like a little lion with a sword.
I also love Elrond's face being part of the landscape while Gandalf is talking to him.
And the hobbits actively playing
on his face.
Like it's a McDonald's
Thinking the
playscape.
superimposed face is trying to be like the Wizard of Oz, like when he superimposes his face. But yeah, the way he described it, they slide down his beard like a slide. Okay.
Also, just
Okay.
a dog with amazing comedic timing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
You're like, wouldn't it be funny if I put the ring in a ball and just played fetch with myself and then went to sleep? That would
How
be
did they
great.
expect this dog to take all these cues?
It's an elven dog. They
No, but I mean, when they actually filmed the movie, there has to be a dog playing the dog.
It was probably going to be like Jane Fonda in a dog suit.
Right.
But enough about John Boorman's personal fantasies. So I
would
think
love
what
to
we'll
hear-
do is in 2 weeks, if everyone is up for it, we'll continue this.